Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Booney's Herbs. I'm Taryn. Our first few videos are going to detail building a setup for some Lygodactylus geckos. We're either going to go for some Lygodactylus williamsi, which I've had before and absolutely love, or some Lygodactylus conraui, which are new to me, but beautiful nonetheless. Either way, they've got about the same sort of care, and this should be a really fun setup for us. They'll be going into a 58 by 50 by 50 cm tall tank that we purchased from Custom Aquaria at the Donny show. The first thing I needed to determine was the height of the basking zone. So according to the UV tool created by Dr. Francis Baines et al., williamsi is a Ferguson Zone 2 species, which means they require a UVI of around about 0.7 to 1 at the basking zone. Given that the williamsi and the conraui both have sticky feet and will climb up onto the mesh, the safest option for UV was an Arcadia Shade Dweller Arboreal. Through the mesh, that gave us a basking zone at around about 10 to 15 centimetres from the roof. Taking advice from Sam Perrott at Herp HQ, I've decided to incorporate some aluminium tubing into the rockwork. The thermostat probe will be placed inside this tube, which means the power to the basking lamp will be driven by the surface temperature of the basking zone, rather than by ambient temps. In order to do this, I took some 12mm aluminium tubing and bent it into place. The piece you see here is an offcut. This had to be bent in 3 different places so that it fit out of the corner of one part of the vivarium, but work its way around to our basking zone. With the tubing bent into shape, I was able to fit it into the tank by pushing it into a gap in the top left corner of the enclosure. This gap was then siliconed over afterwards. I then manoeuvred the pipe to our chosen distance of approximately 10 to 15 centimetres from the mesh. This will be stuck in place once the foaming is done. This method works as follows. The thermostat probe is pushed into the tubing from outside of the tank. It works its way to the very end where it sits inside the rockwork, right under the basking zone. As the rock heats up, it heats the aluminium tube, which gives the thermostat its reading. We'll take numerous measurements using an IR thermometer gun over time to determine the correct thermostat setting in order to hit a basking surface temperature of 30 to 32 degrees. In order to do the foam for the background, I'll be using Smooth On's Foam It 3 from Bentley Advanced Materials, which is a rigid polyurethane foam. This foam comes in 2 parts, A and B. These are mixed in equal volume and poured over the back wall, where they will then expand and form our background. Unlike normal expanding foams, Foam It 3 is much denser and stronger, which makes it ideal for when using concrete. It's more expensive than normal, but I do feel it'll give me a much stronger base to work from. It also comes in a range of different sizes. Foam It 3 expands the most and is plenty for a reptile background. I started by taking Foam It 3, Part A, and filling up a container to about 500 millilitres. I then took Foam It B and filled up another container to 500 millilitres too. Then, utilising a third container, I poured both together and began mixing. You've got about 60 seconds of mixing time before you really need to start pouring it into your enclosure. So get it good and mixed as quick as you can and ready to go in. Very simply, put my pipe in place and then poured all over the back of the tank. I decided to do a full back cover, that way the cement would be supported by the base of the enclosure as well. The foam is workable for around about 20 minutes after it's been poured. This means that as it expands, I can move it around to make some areas thicker and some areas thinner. I can also tidy up if I've made a bit of a mess. As you can see, I'm still able to work the foam, even quite a few minutes after it's been poured. Once dried, I realised it was still a little bit too thin, so I did actually mix up a second batch of around 250ml of each part, poured it in, and then added a branch. The branch was thrown in whilst it was still drying and stuck to one side of the tank so that it would be in place nice and firm. I poured a little bit of extra foam around the edges of the branch as well to keep it in place. As you can see, we've got about 2.5 inches of depth at the bottom. That's plenty of space for us to carve the foam. After 2 hours, the foam is set solid. Everything is in place, our branch is stable, our pipe is stable. Now we need to get to carving. In order to carve, I've put together a few tools. I've got a hot wire foam carver, a bread knife, a Stanley knife, and a hacksaw blade. I don't expect to use all these, but I like to be over prepared. So, let's get carving. I started off by using the hot wire foam cutter, but the skin on the foam was way too tough. So my best option was to carve large chunks out with a bread knife. Even this proved difficult, and in the end I hacked at the foam with a Stanley knife. After a few sessions, I started to see my rockwork taking shape. The Stanley knife proved very effective in creating jagged edges and digging deep into the foam. To ensure that the rockwork looked real, I had to accentuate each carving making it much deeper than I would eventually have once the cement was fitted. And here we have the finished foam carving. Now to cement it up. The cement I have chosen to use is called Rhodes Vertical Mix. This is a really easy cement to use, just a case of adding water and the ramp mixture and mixing up either by hand or mechanically. I've also got some Rhodes ramp, which is a cement cure promoter. I've also got some Smooth On Freeform Air, which is a two-part epoxy putty that dries solid like cement. It is lightweight, so ideal for the basking zone overhang. In order to mix the cement, I took 0.68 kilograms of Rhodes Ramp Cure Promoter and mixed this with 1.7 kilograms of tap water. This was given a quick mix up before slowly adding 7.7 kilograms of cement mix and mixing it up with a shovel. It's important to note at this point that the cement is extremely dusty. I do not recommend doing this in your living room like I did. My missus was fuming. It's at this point that mixing with a shovel began to be tiresome, so I got down on my hands and knees and used my hands to mix it up, kneading it like bread dough. Remember to wear gloves at this point, as cement can be a bit of a pain to get off. Once mixing is complete, you should have a cement with a consistency that will hold a ball when formed, but still be easily pliable. Our first task is to spread this cement in a very thin layer over the entire background. The reason for this is to allow the cement to get a grip into all the nooks and crannies, which allows greater adhesion for the thicker layer of cement later on. Don't worry about being too neat at this point, just get it on there. As the name suggests, Buddy Rhodes vertical mix can be applied easily in any orientation. Microfibers within the cement allow it to hold its shape when placed up vertically. Although the vertical mix can be put in vertically, for a small an enclosure as ours, I decided to lay it on its back. I began layering in the cement slowly, building it up to around an inch in depth. Every bit of the background was covered, including sealing in around the pipe and the branch. Once I was satisfied with the depth and shape of the cement, I took some silicone rock stamps and stamped in a range of rock effect textures to the cement. These stamps were made from castings of real rocks, but that's a video for another day. With the stamping complete, I stood the enclosure back up. The final part of our build is to create a basking platform around our thermostat tube, using the freeform air, part A and part B. With the cement in place, I now decided how far out I wanted the basking zone to stick, and I cut my pipe to size. I also compressed the end of the pipe to prevent the thermostat probe from slipping out. At this point, it was important to test and adjust to ensure the probe would fit in securely, as any mistakes at this point would be hidden once I've built the basking platform. The smooth-on freeform air comes in two parts. Part A is white, whilst part B is grey. You can also get a folding powder which reduces the stickiness, but I was fine in the end without it. Part A and part B are to be mixed in equal volume, where it's then mouldable for around about 20 minutes. I formed a rough shape around the pipe, making sure the layer over the top of the pipe was thin enough to allow heat transfer. This is vital for the system to work. I then ensured that the freeform air was neat